Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 77 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. In today's episode, we're talking with Jean South about optimizing your chances for employment. I connected through one of my groups with Jean, and I saw that she was doing some really good things helping out veterans who were entering the job market. And also, she was working with companies to help them better understand veterans and kind of bring together that military-civilian divide. And she shares a lot of very actionable tips that will help anybody who is entering the job market. So let's get into this interview. Jean South is a Marine spouse, daughter of 2 Army veterans, and former FBI special agent. During her career, she has had the honor of working alongside our nation's warriors. As the president and CEO of Hire Served, Jean gives companies a competitive advantage to compete for veteran talent by helping bridge the cultural gap between military candidates and company recruiters. She also provides career coaching to veterans, teaching them how to use LinkedIn to network more effectively as they transition to their next careers after the military. Jean serves as the Veteran Outreach Director for Bunker Labs Philadelphia, connecting with veterans and veteran service organizations in the Philadelphia metro region to provide entrepreneurship opportunities to veterans and their spouses. All right, let's jump right into the interview. Jean, welcome to the Veteran Resource Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you on. We met through one of the groups that I'm in, one of the many groups that I'm in, and it was a great connection. I love what it is that you're doing, so I wanted to bring you on and have you provide some of this value to the listeners.
Absolutely. I'm also, not to blow smoke, but appreciate what you're doing too, and really grateful for your mission and making sure that we're taking care of our veterans in every way we can.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Jean, let's get into your background to begin with.
Okay. Where do we start?
At the beginning.
Okay, let's do it. I actually have quite the interesting background. We'll start at raised by 2 Army veterans. My parents were out of the military by the time that I was born, but that does not mean that I did not get a little military in my life. And when people ask me about my current job and, translating military to civilians, they ask when that started. And I say it started in gym class when my mother was substituting one day and made us all march in formation around the soccer field. And I had to explain to my classmates what an about face was. I don't recall how old I was, but I do feel like that was my first military to civilian translation experience, and it hasn't stopped. Being raised by Army veterans, I had an assumption I was going to join the military. And when I hit 18, my mom and I had a serious conversation about college. And she basically said that I was going to go to college, like it or not. And if I still wanted to join the military after school, then I could do that. And so 4 years of college and a very young marriage later, I didn't join the military. Instead, at 25, I threw up my hands, frustrated at my job, and said, if I don't apply for the FBI, I'm going to regret it the rest of my life, much to the surprise of basically everyone around me. So I put in for the FBI, ended up being selected, showed up at Quantico January 23rd of 2005, one of the youngest in my class, one of the ones in my class with 0 law enforcement experience, and kind of green and naive, to be honest. Got through Quantico by sheer will. I busted my tail and was bound and determined that I was going to do this. I spent my first year in the Bureau out in Albuquerque. I helped run a gang task force out there. and really started to find my gift out there for connecting people. And most people may or may not be aware that the FBI isn't the most beloved of agencies with state and local police offices sometimes. But, there's all the movies, right? They talk about the FBI showing up and in their suits and we'll take this case over from here. And sadly, that does occasionally happen. I would say that that is not the norm, but you still have that kind of old relic once in a while. And so we have a bit of a reputation that the Bureau has to overcome. And I found that I loved doing that. I loved connecting with local officers, working with the state police, working with the various drug task forces. And so I found that task forces were really what kind of woke me up in the morning. So I did that for a year, married my husband who was assigned out in the Philadelphia area. And so I got transferred to Philly, got to the FBI office in Philadelphia, was asked, what do you want to do? You're on an organized crime squad now. Do you want to work Russians or do you want to work Italians or, all these different options? And I just kind of was like, I really don't know, to be honest. So I fell into working Russian organized crime, which may be the most fun one could have in a lifetime. I would debate anyone who would argue otherwise. So worked Russian organized crime, ran that ended up running another task force after that. Worked within that task force, we actually integrated private industry and lenders. And that, again, is something that's simply not done. People don't normally see law enforcement and lending institutions working hand in hand and really getting things done. So loved that. Had the opportunity to learn to speak Russian. And so I took that opportunity and then became a specialist in human intelligence. And so that kind of means I was taught by a lot of 3-letter high-speed agencies how to find people who could give us really good information and then convince them that it was their really good idea to tell their secrets to the FBI. Yeah, it was a good time.
That's some really good networking experience you got there and translation experience.
Exactly. Learned how to immerse myself into their cultures and learn how to, find people and talk to them and convince them to talk to me. So it served me really, really well. When I decided it was time to leave the Bureau and spend some time in the corporate sector, that networking and that ability to talk to people and connect people has just really served exceptionally well. So I left the Bureau and joined McChrystal Group, which was founded by General Stanley McChrystal and a Navy SEAL, David Silverman. Worked as a leadership and management consultant with them for a couple years. Was honored to sit at the feet of our nation's greatest leaders and learn. I don't know where you get to learn leadership like that from not only the men who've lived it, but who then were teaching it. And so I would just absorb everything I could. It was incredible. And I spent about 6 months working for McChrystal Group as the recruiter on our staff. So all of that kind of came together this summer when I decided it was time to step out on my own and try my hand at entrepreneurship, which, as you know, is an exciting but also a little bit harrowing journey.
Yeah. And so with your company, HireServed, you're not just finding people jobs. You are very niche specific. You're very focused and very targeted at trying to help a certain group.
Yeah. So what I really want to do is help our smaller, medium-sized businesses who want to hire veterans, but they don't have the budget to hire a specialist. You look at the big companies and they have veteran specialists on hand and they can pay for multiple veteran specialists, and that's great. But the small businesses of America really are running our economy and they drive employment and the economy. Yet most of those companies are not going to be in a position to have a full-time veteran specialist, right? They may not even have a full-time HR specialist. So, to look at those companies and say, how do we get more veterans in more of our different, segments of our population, different segments of the economy, the way to do that is for them to have an outsourced solution. So that's really what I am. At a fraction of the cost of having a full timer, I can bring that military specialty, that translation I've been doing since I was, in gym class, and help a company say, what is our strategy? How are we going to, implement this strategy? And, again, thanks to McChrystal Group and all the years of building strategy there, and then take that and figure out how to execute on it. And so it's really the step 5 is finding veterans to fill the jobs. Step 1 is, why do you even want to hire veterans? Let's talk about your motivation and understand why this makes sense to you and why this is something you want to do.
And what are some of those reasons why a business would want to hire veterans?
Yeah, a lot of businesses have different reasons. And, to be completely pragmatic, there are those that it's a good PR stunt. And that's a thing. And I'm actually at peace with that concept as long as we're honest about it. I'm very pragmatic about, let's be direct and understand it. But more than that, the bulk of the companies look deeper. And some people say, hey, my dad served, my brother served, I know someone. And so there's patriotism. And then even more than that is the reality that veterans bring some pretty awesome things to the workforce. Veterans are extremely disciplined. They don't see problems, they see an opportunity to overcome. And the small business owner, a startup, they need people who are not going to get stuck when they run into a problem. Businesses love the work ethic, they love the dedication, the loyalty, and the leadership is really above all. Every vet you talk to, from the moment they strap their boots on, has been leading and finding out about leadership and being taught and being mentored. And so that natural leadership just really fits incredibly well. I have a company I was working with the other day, and she said, I need somebody to, it's not sexy. I need them to install AV equipment in the companies that we are contracted by, but I need a team leader who can take my other tech under this wing, go with them to a job site, interface with my clients in a way that honors my company, and get it done. And that I know if they get the job done 2 hours early, that person's going to now call in and say, where else do we go? Versus just kind of go to McDonald's and hang out for a while.
Right.
So they're looking for that ability to lead themselves and others.
That's perfect. Yeah, you're describing veterans left and right with everything that you were saying there.
Yeah, I know a few.
I know that when I was in the DoD space, that would happen time and again, where people would come to the table, and the problem would be identified. Like we can't do this because this regulation says that we can't do that, and it's like, okay, well, so what's the plan? Well, we're just gonna have to scrap this. It's like, you're gonna scrap that. Has anybody talked to them about changing the policy? Has anybody, tried any other avenues at all? And then you just see like a bunch of blank stares around the room. It's like, okay, yeah, all right. There's other options there. You can't always just do what everybody's always done. You got to look at other opportunities to fix it.
And it's hard because, especially in the government bureaucracy, I mean, I know myself, having fought that beast for a very long time, it does dull people to, wow, like we're just going to beat our heads up against this wall again. But, if you drill down and you watch vets out in the field, you watch our military in the field, they're never going to be fully equipped. There's never enough food, enough ammo, enough guns, enough vehicles. There's always the fact that as soon as you're on target and you're, 5 miles out from your objective, something changes and you've got to move, adapt, change. And all of a sudden you had enough of everything for the one time ever. And now you don't, because the mission just changed in mid-cycle. And so that problem solving and that ability to just kind of take a look at it and assess very quickly. I was talking, actually sitting through something last night at Bunker Labs, And one of the entrepreneurs, Dan Tobin, his piece of advice, he was talking about, as entrepreneurs, you've got to do what we had to do in the military, which was make really big decisions on very little data and drive forward. And if you make a mistake, you back up and fix it, but you don't get paralyzed by the fact that you don't have enough information. And again, you think about your small businesses, right? You think about your companies that aren't the bureaucracies, and they need people who are willing to say, I don't have enough information. I'm not going to stop moving.
Absolutely. America has lost more to indecision than bad decision.
Amen.
And so looking at the job seeker, you help them as well, right? You're not just helping the businesses, you're helping the veteran job seekers.
Yeah, when I can, which isn't as often as I would love to, because I'm not able to do it completely for free right now, just because my dogs insist on being fed every day. It's obnoxious, but I do work with a lot of veterans, a couple a week that I do pro bono, and then as I can, to help them understand how to do this job transition thing. And I've done this multiple times myself. And so I've actually kind of found a system that seems to really be effective. And all of the vets that I've coached and talked through, how to execute have found jobs actually fairly quickly. And in addition, they found themselves. And so one of the things I see that is really the hardest piece for me emotionally is the fact that our vets leave the service and, someone's taught them in theory how to write a resume. But no one's asked them for their whole career, what do you want to do? You look at the tests that recruits take before they even enlist, and it's not asking how you feel about being a gunner, right? It's saying, what are you capable of? And therefore, this is where you're going. Unless you're one of the few that has a really, really high score and, they really want to retain you. But for the most part, you're told where to go. And so no one's asked these guys. And, it's one thing at 22, it's another at 28. It's a whole different beast when you're dealing with a retiring lieutenant colonel, right?
Right.
No one's ever said, what do you want to do? No one's ever asked, where do you want to go? What excites you? And so one of the things I really, really focus on is understanding what gets you out of bed in the morning. And then how do we find you a job that allows you to use the skills you have that will give you that satisfaction? And they don't always match up perfectly, but that I think is the biggest disservice that we're doing to our veterans with all of the exit programs is nobody's saying still, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Exactly. Oh my God, this is exactly spot on. When I got out of the military, I mean, I knew that I wanted to do something with computers because I enjoyed it. I wasn't doing computer stuff in the military. I was personnel. So I got the closest I got was messing with, Word and Excel and PowerPoint, doing presentations and things like that. But, getting out, you're told, okay, you got to find a job. So put the resume together and go after something. And so, I jumped right into a computer job as a government contractor. And if I had stopped to think, even for a little bit, what is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that I don't want to do? Because one of the reasons that I was getting out of the military was because I didn't want to be in a cubicle anymore. And I go right into a job.
Right back in the cubicle.
For the next 16 years where I'm sitting in a cubicle.
Well, and the other piece that makes me a little bit crazy, and it's well-meaning, and there's no one in this space. I won't say no one. There's a handful of people in the space who've seen the opportunity. So I don't want to say that. But I would say 99.9% of the people in this space are heart is in the right place. It is all kinds of trying to do the right thing. But one of the things that just makes me a little bit crazy is the MOS translator. And so there are very, very many websites where you can go and plug in your MOS, and that's your military occupational specialty. I know the Army and the Marine Corps use MOS. Air Force uses a slightly different code, and I believe the Navy also does. But essentially, it's your job description. It's what you did, and you type that in, and the computer will kick out a list of skills that you therefore should be able to do in the corporate world. And it might even tell you this equates to project management. And most frequently, it does equate to project management because basically everyone in the military is project managing at some point in time. And so you end up with this list of tasks that people then put on their resume, and then they feel they are bound to this one job description because that's what I can do. And so the MOS translator is great in helping understand what the civilian terms are for the things you did, but it stinks because there is no question of, did this fulfill you? Like at no point does the MOS equals this ask, and did you like it?
That would cross off 3/4 of everybody's list.
Right. Well, right. Exactly. we all did stuff working for the government that we really don't ever want to do again. So that's one of my big struggles is helping vets figure that out. So one of the things I send people to is Simon Sinek, Find Your Why. And he's got a TED Talk about it. He's got a website about it. On his website, actually, Simon Sinek on his website has Why University, and it's a $130 course last I checked, and he gives it to veterans for a processing fee of $10.
Wow.
And I was able to get it as a military spouse, but it took a little more. I had to send a copy of my dependent card, things like that. But it's a really intense course. It's not like a take an hour course and move on with life. There's a lot of work to be done. You have to sit down with a partner and log on, and for 4 hours it asks you questions, and it digs into your psyche pretty deeply. So there's a lot of self-discovery that happens with it. But I think it's one of the most valuable exercises that you can possibly do, especially for those of us who have been in the government and don't understand what we bring to the civilian sector.
That sounds awesome. And
yeah,
I'm going to have to get that link from you.
I'll get it to you.
We'll search for it, and I'll put that in the show notes. So if anybody's listening and you want to go in and grab that $10, that's an incredible deal for that.
It is. And Simon Sinek is world renowned. I mean, it's kind of become in vogue, the what's your why, but I still see resumes every day that start out with, so-and-so is a motivated, driven project manager capable of accomplishing the mission. And I'm like, right. And you and every other veteran whose resume I'm going to look at today. And so my first phone call, and I tell the vets I work with, I say I am a pretty direct person. I don't pull a lot of punches. I wouldn't do you a favor if I did. So, let's strap on the big boy pants because this is coming. And I kind of lay into him and say, I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about you at all from this other than you're able to write a task list on a piece of paper. And for me, and again, every recruiter is different. I can't speak for everyone on the planet. But I remember to this day a resume that I got that started out by telling me all about who the person was. And at the bottom, he even listed that he liked to listen to like indie rock music or something crazy, like whatever it was some kind of music. And I remember thinking, I want to talk to this person. I didn't actually end up hiring him. He wasn't suited to the role that we were hiring at the moment.
But he got in the door.
He got an interview. Absolutely. I got on the phone with him and I couldn't wait for that interview. So as a person who was interviewing 6 people a day minimum, I was excited about that interview. So if that tells you anything about what we need to be thinking about when we're writing resumes, you want to be the one where the interviewer is looking at the resume going, oh my God, I can't wait to talk to this person, as opposed to like, hey, look, it's another person who can write a task list. Awesome.
Right, right. You need to really make that resume stand out. So
It does.
is there anything else that veterans who are job seeking? I imagine there's a lot of listeners right now that are job seeking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else that they should be looking at doing, that they should be focusing on?
Absolutely. I have a couple of things, and I've got some blog posts out. So if people go to my LinkedIn, they can definitely see a few of the fairly direct blogs I've addressed to our veteran population. But a few key points that I do want to make sure people hear. The first is, and this is again going to be pretty direct, stop complaining on social media. Get off social media with your gripes about recruiters. I understand recruiters don't give a lot of feedback. I understand you're not getting calls back. I understand you are frustrated, and it is infuriating. But there are some groups on LinkedIn that are aimed at veterans, but a lot of recruiters are there because recruiters are looking for vets to hire. So there's a lot of recruiters hanging out in these chat rooms. And almost every day I see someone get on and just blast recruiters as a cult, as a whole, right? All recruiters suck. I hate them all. Why don't they do their jobs? They're useless, blah, blah, blah. So guess who's not going to get a phone call from the Amazon recruiter or the JP
Right.
Morgan recruiter or the Comcast recruiter or any of the military headhunters who are out there looking for someone to represent? So stay off of especially LinkedIn, but really any social media with your negative opinions. Have that conversation over a beer with one of your buddies. I know that conversation has to be had because you're frustrated, but social media is not the place for it. So number one, keep in mind that everybody sees what you're saying, and it does not make you an attractive candidate when you bitch and moan. It just doesn't. Number two is that find your why. So that was my second piece. You've got to do that. You've got to express who you are. Tell me who you are so that I want to hire you. I actually heard a recruiter last night say that when you get entranced with somebody and you realize as a recruiter kind of who they are, then you start thinking, where do I plug this person in? So even if the role they've applied for isn't the right role, you get that recruiter's wheels spinning. So you want that recruiter thinking about you. And the way you do that is by standing out as to who you are and really being authentic to who you are. The third is stop focusing on the resume. It's not the end all be all. So I know that Jeremy, you and I have talked a little bit about the resume. The resume has received so much attention, and people are forgetting that right now the way recruiting is being done in the bulk of companies is there's something called an applicant tracking system. It's also an ATS for short. The job of the ATS is to filter candidates out. It is not to pull you in. So when you look at that system, hundreds of candidates come into it, and it is looking for exact word matches. And so, there's all this wisdom about making your resume exactly match the job posting. It's a lot of effort for very little payoff, if you ask my opinion. I find that the better thing to do is get your resume really good. So when it does get into a recruiter's hands, they do love it. But more than that, skip the system. Do not push the apply here button. I call the apply here button basically like, a job application with a side of Prozac. It's just depressing. Like, it's just nobody feels good about life after hitting apply here 100 times. I've never met anyone who feels good about themselves after that.
And then you just stare at the phone for a while and
Right.
stare and stare.
Exactly. And you look at the computer and you check your email 100 times a day and you get the form, thank you for your application. We'll call you. And then they never call. And then you get on LinkedIn and complain about it. This is a cycle that is not positive. And I've seen people, I've applied to 200 jobs, I've 300 jobs. And if you're applying to that many jobs, I'm curious about your why and what you're applying to, because I'm curious if you actually know what you want to be when you grow up. And then the next piece is if you're doing that, I promise you don't feel good about your life right now. I know people in this boat. And So the trick and the kind of what you got to do to get around that is you've got to network. And I think networking now can be done more high tech than what we think of normally. You think of like this networking event where you go and you have a glass of wine in your hand and you're trying to talk to people and like slip them your business card and your resume, and it's awkward and uncomfortable and everybody hates it.
I'm actually one of the few that love doing that just because I love to get in front of people. So
I can see that with you. I can see that you would enjoy that. And I'll admit I don't hate that, but I am an extreme extrovert and I don't hate it. Like I don't always love it, but I don't always hate it either.
But we are the few. We are the few.
But we are the few. I mean, to be honest, the extreme extroverts, if we don't think it's like the best thing on the planet every day, then God forbid an introvert. I don't know how introverts even do it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that's where I actually, when I was kind of in my transition, I drew on what the FBI taught me about finding people and getting information. And I kind of codified that. And if you don't mind, I'll kind of share some of those steps with your listeners just to give them a start. And if they have questions, they can always reach out to me. Is that all right?
That sounds great.
Perfect. Okay. So we're going to run through this quick because I don't want to make everybody crazy, but the whole thing that we do in intelligence services is you figure out what's your intelligence requirement. So what's my question? What do I need answered? Is Al-Qaeda hanging out in Philadelphia, right? So the question then guides who you're going to talk to get the information. So your questions when you're looking for a job are, what do I want to do? Where do I want to do it? And how do I get there? So if you're looking for a specific role and trying to understand, I heard someone say the other day, he kept applying to business development roles because he thought it was leadership development within a business. And he kept getting calls for sales. And he's like, I don't want to do sales. He hadn't even researched all of that. So you have to learn about the role. What is project management in this company versus that? What is program management? They're different. Is business development a place that you would love to be? It might be. So first learn about a role and then start thinking about companies. One of the biggest disappointments is believing the value statements that a company has pasted on their website only to get inside the company and realize they don't live that. And I hear that from a lot of folks that, the values of the company aligned with mine, but they didn't live them. And so I got inside this company and realized that I didn't want to be there. So the way to find out if they're living their values on the inside is to talk to people on the inside. Magic trick. It's seems so obvious. And then learning about people's paths, right? Talking to other veterans and figuring out if they're in finance and they're running a compliance department, how'd they get there? How did that happen for them? And is that a path you can or should replicate? So once you have your questions kind of nailed down, that guides who you're going to target. And so LinkedIn is amazing with its search capabilities. And so what you can do is go to LinkedIn, and if you're interested in finding out about anti-money laundering investigator roles, you can go and Google anti-money laundering. And then you can add the qualifier and it's a Boolean search. So you use capital A and D. And then you say veteran, or you pick the service you're in. If you're in the Army, you say Army. And then magically it's going to pop up all kinds of people in your network and outside of it that are involved in anti-money laundering compliance and investigations and were in the Army. And so now you have the perfect people to start talking to learn, because they have a reason to talk to you. The biggest thing about talking to a stranger is figuring out why they would want to speak to you. And if they were in the same service, the veteran community is amazing. All you have to do is say, I'm a vet. I get to say I'm a Marine wife, and I cannot tell you the doors that have fallen off their hinges for me when I say, I'm a Marine wife. I need help.
We don't even need a secret handshake or anything.
Oh, it's great. Nobody even verifies that I really married a Marine. God bless them. Although my guess is they can tell pretty quickly with me.
Right.
But it's magic. We take care of our own. And so capitalize on that. Go and find somebody who's a vet and doing what you want to do, and then connect to them. And the first thing to do is just a connection request. And on LinkedIn, you have 300 characters. This is not a time to tell a life story, but my absolute hard and fast rule is you must personalize your LinkedIn connection request. If you just send the standard, I'd like to put you in my network, I will hunt you down. It's not okay. It's not okay. So that only has to be, hey, I see you were in the Army, so was I. I think I want to transition to AML. Could we talk? Okay. Or you don't have to say, could we talk? I want to add you to my network. Tell them why you're connecting. It really doesn't have to be complicated.
Because I've done this this week. And when you go to, I admit pretty novice when it comes to LinkedIn. So I'm getting better. But when you go to connect with somebody who you don't actually know, it throws up the obstacle and says, wait a second, do you know this person? How do you know this person? So how do you get past that?
So I hope the LinkedIn police are not listening, and I hope that if they are, that it's Dan Savage at LinkedIn Veterans and that he will forgive me for this. So I just say that we work together and I will look at what makes sense. So right now I'm connecting to a lot of veterans or veteran recruiters. And so I say we work together while I was the president at Hire Served. And it's, it works. I don't know what LinkedIn would feel about that. But if we're both in the Army, you say we work together at United States Army. Because you did.
Totally did. Yep.
Right? Totally did. And so I tend to just use that. LinkedIn has not banned me yet. So until it does, that's my good advice. And if it starts banning me, then we'll go from there.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll let you go on from there now because I'm so interested in what you have to say about LinkedIn.
Yeah. So after that, you'll get an email that says, this person accepted your connection request. So once they do that, now you can send them a LinkedIn message directly without needing to, because there's like limits on how many emails you can send to strangers, things like that. But you can also look and see their contact information and get their direct email address, usually. So if it has somebody's direct email address, it looks like a work email address, I will often just email them directly. And because InMail can be a little bit of a pain, or I'll just shoot them an InMail and say, and this is where you actually have to think this through, right? You need to actually know what you want to ask. So I tell everybody to write down 3 questions. And, that question may be, how did you get into anti-money laundering compliance? We're just going to stick with that example for now. What do you find challenging? What do you find interesting? It may be, how did your military skills convert? You want to have an actual reason to talk to somebody. So then you're going to email them and say, hi, I'm in the middle of my transition. I'm looking to learn more about anti-money laundering compliance. I'm very interested in that field. Would you be willing to meet with me for 15 to 30 minutes so I can ask you some questions? The things that I really want to know are, and give them what you're looking for. I usually say tell them 2 of the 3, so you kind of have a third to make you sound smart in the conversation. But I'm trying to learn about anti-money laundering and how you get into the field. Are you available to speak? And then I tell everyone it's a sales tactic, assume the sale. So are you available to speak next week? I am available at X, Y, and Z time, and give them 3 windows and let them pick which of those windows works for them. If you just say, are you free to chat? Let me know. People just are so busy, and it's not intention. It's just lack of bandwidth, and they may or may not be able to get back to you, and they may not think about it. Right. And so you do the very, it's almost assumptive, and that's hard for us in our community. We don't make a lot of assumptions, and we don't talk about me, and we tend to be, a little more others centric. And you can't be in a job search. You don't get that luxury. So you assume the sale, you give them some times and dates, and then you send that off. When they respond, you obviously respond immediately, you schedule it. The night before you call them, you get back on their LinkedIn and you learn everything you can about them. I can't tell you the number of times things changed for people between when I scheduled and when I got on the phone with them. I ended up doing about 60 interviews in 60 days, which was exhausting. I
Wow.
don't recommend that, folks. I bought myself a database just to keep myself straight because I was losing my mind. That was maybe overkill, but again, with my past life, it kind of made sense for me. Um,
Organization. I love it.
yeah, yeah, I know, right? I told my husband, I finally sat down on the couch one night exhausted. I said, I need a database. And he's like, you're out of control. I'm like, yes, that is true. That is not new news. So you're going to sit down the night before and you're going to review their LinkedIn and make sure nothing changed. Did they get a promotion? Did they leave their company? Did they publish something? That's even better, right? If they publish something, that's great. And I have to say, and this isn't to toot my own horn, this is just to say in conversations I've had, I can always tell who's read my LinkedIn profile and who hasn't. Because not every day do you speak to an FBI agent, a former FBI agent, who's and I've got a few articles published that within LinkedIn, and people will sit down with me and we'll be talking for X amount of time, and I'll mention something about the bureau offhand, and they go, "What bureau?" And I'm like, I mean, it's hard to miss. It's just hard to miss. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not trying
it
to be
stands
great.
out.
Like, it's just not a thing that everybody, unless you're somebody who has, knows 20 people in the bureau, in which case, cool, right?
Right.
But I know instantly if someone prepared and if someone actually put time into being ready to talk to me. And if they didn't, it makes me question how important this conversation is to them. And if it's not important to you, then why is it important to me? Because it's actually your request, not mine.
Very
So,
nice.
you gotta prep. So you go over your questions, you go over their LinkedIn. Think about a rapport builder. It's really important to have something to break the ice. Even for extroverts like you and I, getting on the phone and talking to a complete stranger when you're asking them to give you their time, it's just awkward. And so to be able to say, I saw that you volunteer with Semper Fido. That's really cool. I like dogs too. It doesn't have to be profound. It just has to be common.
Gene,
So,
do you know who I got off the phone with a minute before I got on the call with you?
did you just get off the phone with Super Fido?
I did.
Oh my God, who did you talk to over there?
I was talking with Jeffrey Beck.
It was Jeff. That's incredible.
Yep.
So for the listeners, I'm on the board at Semper Fido. We rescue dogs and give them, train them as service dogs, and then give them to service members with PTSD and TBI. So Jeff is our on-staff counselor who has himself battled with PTSD from combat, and so he is an amazing resource. I can't wait to hear that episode.
It's really good. Yeah, it came out. The interview was just very engaging, and I'm looking forward to putting it out there. It's going to be a little while before, I think your episode might come out before his.
Okay.
So just know that, listeners, just know that it's coming.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, Jeff is, man, he's incredible. That's funny. So you had mentioned my Semper Fido involvement. And then from there, you jump right in. You make sure you respect people's time. People don't have a lot of time to be giving away right now. And if someone's willing to take their time to give to you, you want to be really respectful. So you jump in, you build some rapport, you jump right into your questions. Tell them the reason you called. The reason I wanted to talk to you is I knew that you did this, and I have questions. Get your questions out, and the minute you finish asking your question, shut up and listen. One of the biggest mistakes is to call someone for their wisdom and then sit there and spend 30 minutes talking about yourself, because you already knew that information before you called me. You didn't need me on the phone to learn that about yourself, right?
Absolutely.
So all the listening, none of the talking. Ask some intelligent questions. There are two questions you always must ask. The first is, what else should I have asked you that I did not ask you? It's the magical catch-all question that they teach in the FBI Academy. And if you don't ask it on every interview, you're crazy.
Very nice.
And yeah, yeah. It's amazing what people cop to when you just give them the opportunity. We had I'm going to take a total rabbit trail.
All right.
An agent I worked with in my first office told this story about how they showed up to this guy's house. They knock on the door, knock, 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 FBI. Guy opens the door and they're there to ask about a neighbor. I mean, it's just, they're not even there for dude. And dude opens the door. He's like, "You're here about the drugs, aren't you?" And they're like, they're kind of looking at each other like, "Yes, yes, we are. Show us the drugs." And almost every law enforcement officer in the country has a story just like that. Because if you give people an opening to talk, the things they say, it's always informative.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
So your first is, what else should I have asked that I did not ask? And your second is, who else should I talk to about this? So that's where you get some really good magic happening. You're not going to ask this person for a referral, please refer me to get a job at your firm. That's not what you're asking for. You're hoping for that. I mean, we definitely are hoping that happens. But who else should I be talking to is going to give them an introduction or an opportunity to provide you introduction. So they're going to give you that warm introduction, which is really valuable. They're going to put you through to people you probably wouldn't have access to. And they're also going to think about things you hadn't thought of before. So you may be on the phone with an AML compliance officer who says, you might actually be really intrigued by working compliance in the pharmaceutical industry. I have a friend in pharma.
Yes.
Who knew that was a thing, right?
Exactly. And the listeners, if you're looking for a real life scenario of seeing this in action, listen to every one of my previous episodes where I'm talking to a veteran nonprofit. One of my final 3 questions that I ask every single nonprofit is, who would you like to hear on a future episode of the Veteran Resource Podcast? And that's specifically to find out there's so much that I know that I don't know. By giving these people the opportunity to tell me about some of these amazing organizations, I'm finding nuggets out there that I never would have found otherwise.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the magic. The last step, and this is a step that shouldn't be unfamiliar to any of us in this community, but unfortunately we forget that we can apply our military training, is an after action review. Do an AAR. What was my objective with this phone call? Did I accomplish it? What went well? What didn't go well? And how do you know if it didn't go well? If you asked a question and you got dead air and the answer was, I don't know, that didn't go well. Right?
Good indication.
It's an indicator. In the Bureau, during the academy, they used to stomp their foot and say, that's a clue. That's a clue. But the other piece is understanding the world is not going to give us the volume of feedback that we're accustomed to. So within the military, you received fitness reports on a regular basis, and it was very clear guidelines, and it was very clear does or does not meet expectations. Why? What do you need to work on? The rest of the world does not have, much to the chagrin of many veterans I've worked with, that kind of a system. And even if they theoretically have a system on paper, they don't execute it well. So you've got to get used to figuring out and getting your own feedback. And so instead of waiting for a commander to write a fit rep and give it to you, you need to start conducting AARs on a regular basis, whether it be the end of a project, the end of a work week, whatever. And so this is practice to start that, because recruiters are not going to give you feedback on your interviews. 9 times out of 10, you're not getting it. There's a bunch of reasons. I've written a post about some of the reasons I saw as a recruiter. There's 1,000 others, to include time. But if you can turn every experience into a learning experience, if you can get to where you after action review everything in your head the minute it's over, then you say, what do I need to do better next time? And you get really good at this really fast. If you just get off the phone and go, well, I don't know how that went, and walk away, you're not going to improve. You're just only going to have the information you got out of the interview. And you're not then going to have that skill set going into corporate America that you're going to have.
Great advice. And Jean, I feel like we have got so many nuggets of value from you today, but I still feel like there's so much more that we could pull out of you. And I think what I would like to do is I would much rather have the listeners out there connect with you and find out everything else that you have to offer. Get that one-on-one help that will really take them to the next level and help them find not that job, but that why that is going to really, really fire up that passion in them to want to wake up in the morning and jump out of bed and go to that job. So for everybody out there, people that have businesses that might be wanting to hire veterans, or for veterans out there that are looking to get a job, what is the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. For veterans looking for some mentorship, I want to recommend that you hop on veterati.com, veterati.com. I am one of the mentors in that platform, and Hire Served will very soon have our own platform, which I'm really excited about. But I'm not the only one in there. That platform is full of people who are willing to mentor you, who've walked this path before or have access to jobs, or, for any number of reasons. And there's really there's some people in there that actually have some crazy titles, and you're like, wow, this person's going to give me their time for free. So get in Veterati. I have hours in there on a regular basis. If for some reason mine are filled up, you can request more. And if possible, we'll add those in. But you can also get signed up with other mentors, not just myself. So one, Veterati. The other is just my name, Jean, Jean, at Hire Served. And it's hire, like hire someone for a job, Hire, served, SERVED.com.
Awesome. Excellent. And I will make sure that I put those in the show notes, make it super easy for everybody to get connected with you.
People can hit me up. I've got a Facebook, Jean South, SOUTH, like the direction. Easy. And then I've got one up for Hire Served. So you can also join my Hire Served page, find me that way. I'm a solo entrepreneur, so there are days that I don't get as much email done as I'd like, but I will get back to you for sure.
Excellent. Well, Jean, thank you so much for coming on the show. I love the value that you provided today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be able to share this information with folks, and excited to work with great companies who really are ready to get vets on staff.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more out there that are going to be hearing this and want to get involved.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's important for us to do that. And, as you and I talked a tad before we started, the long-term goal for Hire Served is not just veterans, but then military spouses and anyone who has served our nation. And so I've got some pretty lofty goals planned for us, but we're going to start here and see if we can't change the world one vet at a time.
Outstanding. I love it. All right, Jean, you have a great evening.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to episode 77. I hope that you got a lot out of it. I know that I did, especially those tips on LinkedIn. That was some really good stuff. As always, make sure you go and check out the show notes. They're at veteranresourcepodcast.com/077. And you're going to get all of the information about how to connect with Jean and Hire Served. And don't keep this podcast a secret. You obviously enjoy it. You listened all the way through till now. So share it with everybody you know. I know that there's some other people around you that will also enjoy it as much as you do. Thanks again, and I will see you next week for episode 78.